Hey, how's it going? Thought I'd do another quick video on this Winnebago View before I take it to the dealer to trade it in today. Learned a lot over it the last while. You know, I'm not going to get into a lot of things like how you get the Bluetooth hooked up. It's not quite the same as the directions. But one thing we learned as we were trying to dry camp a couple of times is the toilet and the black water system in the View has a couple of issues. And it took me a while to figure it out. I mean, I was really frustrated with it because it seemed like the black tank just filled up so fast. You get to your camp and within a half a day, the warning light on the toilet would go yellow. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. But then it took a long time to go red. So I did a lot of research on it and I found a couple things that I thought might be helpful. I thought I'd point those out. And if you're a View owner and you're having to dump your black tank way more than you think you should, or at least you want to dry camp and you really want to maximize the storage, maybe this will help you. Anyway, let's go take a look at what's going on real quick. So this will be a little bit hard because I don't have my slide out and I don't want to put it out so the door won't come open very wide. But the toilet system has this flush system. And the one thing to note about the toilet is it's what's called a macerating toilet. I think that's how you pronounce it. Basically, it grinds everything up and it pumps it. Some RVs use those because then your black tank doesn't have to sit right underneath the toilet. In this case, I think it is. But the advantage of that is that everything doesn't pile up on the bottom like a normal RV toilet. You won't have a problem with a pile. But the disadvantage is it's like a normal toilet. That's just, sorry here. You know, it looks pretty much like a normal toilet, and let me go ahead and flush it real quick. And you'll see that it flushes a lot like a normal toilet. Fills up with water. Now when it flushes, it'll go into a chamber, and you can't hear it grind because the water pump's going. Then it'll fill back up. So it's really nice for an RV toilet. It's automatic. But the problem is it uses a lot more water than a standard RV toilet. If you want to dry camp, the first thing you have to be aware of is that you need to set the level. There are two buttons and you push the left one. Most of the time you only push the right one if there's solid waste. And you can set the level of the toilet. If you look right here on the lid, it'll tell you how to do that. So my first tip is understand that your water pressure will determine that level somewhat. So basically, anytime you hook to a new water supply or change over to your water pump, you might want to set that water level if conserving water in the black tank is an issue because you're dumping too often or you want to dry camp. What I would actually do is I would set the water level basically for both sides pretty low. Let me see if I can show it on the video. So it just barely covers the opening back there. When you push the right side, it consumes more water in flushing, and it will also fill it up a little fuller if you want it to. But we didn't really find that necessary. So that's the first thing you can do. Now, the other thing I will mention while I'm in the bathroom here is the lavatory, which is a little bit of a kind of a creative idea, but kind of a pain as it swings back and forth to take a shower. The lavatory itself is a gray water source. But Winnebago has piped that and drains that into the black tank. It took me a while to figure that out. My sink would fill up and wouldn't drain, and I couldn't figure it out because the gray tank was empty. And then I took a look at the schematics and I realized, yeah, they're dumping the gray water, the lav water, into the black tank. Now that's not that uncommon in the RV industry. That's of course a good one to dump because it's not as much water. But if you're really trying to conserve your black tank, I can get out of the bathroom now. If you're really trying to conserve your black tank and the space in it because you're dry camping and you just can't dump as often, then you probably would want to maybe not use that lavatory sink. That's what we would do. We would brush our teeth and wash our hands in the kitchen sink, which does drain into the gray tank. So the last thing I thought I would mention about the toilet is the LEDs and the levels. That toilet has its own sensor system, And they're actually, I believe, applied to the outside of the tank. I don't think they drill into the tank. The RV also has its own sensors, and those you can read above the panel, above the closet, at least in my model. I'm in the G, 24G. What we would find is that that thing would turn yellow really quick. It's like, okay, wait a minute. We've only been here for less than a day, and we're already yellow. Yellow's supposed to be warning you that your tank's getting kind of full. Then we would notice it would take just, the panel above the closet would say it's a third, or not even, or even empty when it turned yellow. And we would notice that once it was yellow, it would stay yellow for a long, long time. And then, eventually the panel above the fridge or above the closet would say 2/3 full. And at that point, if you kept going, eventually you get the red. And once that LED turns red, you can't flush the toilet anymore. You've got to go dump it. Well, I crawled under there to take a look, and the reason it's like that is there are two sensors that are part of the toilet, independent of the coach sensors. And one of those sensors is mounted close to the top, so it's pretty much full, and that's the one that basically says it's red. But the one that's to warn you is less than a quarter of a way up, especially the way the tank's designed. If you take the tank as a cube, and you take out a big chunk of the corner to put the pipe in, so the bottom 4 or 5 inches holds less than it goes up, that's about where that yellow indicator is. It's really pretty useless. It's going to turn yellow. You're going to be probably less than a quarter of a tank. The black tank will be less than a quarter full when that thing turns yellow, maybe a little more. Unless they made a change in your RV, if you've noticed that, it turns yellow really quick. Now, the one thing I will say is that sensor is just stuck to the outside. It's not drilled into the tank. I was considering going to try to pull it off and re-stick it up higher, and I figured if I broke it, I could buy a replacement sensor. Because what I think would be smart is I want that thing to turn yellow when my tank's about 3/4 full, so I know, okay, I got to figure out how to dump it. You can relatively, judge how much time. We pretty much gave up on paying any attention to that yellow light. We simply watched the sensor above the closet, and when it got to 2/3, that's when we would say, okay, we've got to, figure out how to dump, even if we're dry camping. Fortunately, that didn't happen too often because we were really, really conservative with the water and the flushing, and it worked out pretty good. Anyway, that's some issues with the toilet in the Winnebago View. Hopefully you find this somewhat useful. Maybe you've been frustrated with their toilet before. Now, maybe you don't dry camp. If you don't dry camp, it's probably not a big deal. But maybe you're tired of going out and dumping that tank every single day because it just fills up so fast. Anyway, hope you find it helpful. See ya.